extends life. The spice expands consciousness.
Hello and welcome to Conversations with Dr. Steven Greer. This is Dr. Greer of the CSETI Project and the Disclosure Project. And I'd like to thank the people at the World Puja Network for hosting us every 2 weeks here to bring you updates on the project and what is new and exciting. And we have a really wonderful announcement for today's show, and I'm very honored to have an extraordinary computer engineer and software engineer with us, Todd Goldenbaum, who many of you may know from the OrionProject.org website. He's been the webmaster for that site, and he has been working diligently over the past few months or year on a breakthrough app for iPhones and iPads where you can go to the App Store if you have an iPhone or an iPad and download this app, and you will have the full instructional information for how to make contact with ET civilizations, the meditations, the electronic tones we send out into space, the philosophy behind it, videos, photographs. I mean, it's just an amazing application. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Todd Goldenbaum to the show.
Hi, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's wonderful. And why don't you just sort of go through for folks, since you're the guy who created this app for folks who have iPhones and iPads, the sort of features it has and what it can do.
Sure. Basically, the iPhone app is a sort of a dual-purpose app. We've got a full course in making contact, which includes sort of an e-book along with audio recordings of tutorials and lectures and guided meditations. And then we also have working instruments that allow you to, like you were saying, make contact and go out and do field work like we do with CSETI. So the app is basically guided and it's broken up into 5 parts. The first part is a guide that includes an e-book that's broken down into lots of little sections, so it's not like one big, long piece of reading material. It's something you can read when you're in line at the bank or whatever. And then it includes about an hour's worth of recorded tutorials from CSETI trainings. It also includes things like lists of equipment that you should bring out in the field to do contact work and so on, as well as an introduction to meditation and coherent thought sequencing. The second part of the app is instruments, and that includes a compass and a working magnetometer, which is something a lot of people don't realize the iPhone can even do. The iPhone includes a magnetometer chip that allows you to, for one thing, allows a compass to work, but we've also repurposed it so that you can detect anomalous electromagnetic signals. And this is something that, as you know, Steve, happens all the time when we go out and do field work. We get all sorts of patterns of electromagnetic fluxes coming right there in the group, and it's really interesting. So the fact that we can do
this is a very exciting development, and when I first saw it, I have to say I was absolutely stunned. And as some background for folks, if I can divert for a minute, as many of you know, and you'll see more of this if you go to CSETI.org, CSETI.org, for 20 years we have had a interplanetary diplomatic team to go out and make peaceful contact with these interstellar civilizations that are visiting Earth. And we have found over the years a number of things, a number of things that really work. One, and of course people at the World Puja Network will appreciate this, is the power of non-local consciousness and the power of the mind to be able to remote view remote places in space and connect with extraterrestrial electromagnetic systems that are how they communicate across the vast light years of space. And this is a technique that Todd referred to as coherent thought sequencing, where it's sort of like if you can visualize laser light being coherent light, what we do is that we go into a meditative state as a group while we're out under the stars, and we go into an expanded state of awareness, and then we remote view the area around us, the area around Earth, and go out into deep space. And anyone who then sees in their mental remote viewing, in their conscious awareness, an extraterrestrial being or spacecraft or civilization capable of getting to Earth, we connect with them, and then we do this sequence where we sort of invite them in a peaceful fashion as ambassadors, citizen ambassadors from Earth to their civilizations, to come to the Earth. And we actually do a reverse of the going out into space and zoom back in, where we actually then show them our location by coming into our solar system and then coming into the area around the Earth. And if we're, say, in North America, we show them where we are in North America, all the way down to a few hundred meters of where our group is located, wherever that may be. And we actually show them our location, and we also show them who's in the group, and that we're sending up, we have these lasers that we send up, and people on this app will see where you can get these. And we also have these electromagnetic tones that actually have come from extraterrestrial civilizations that have been recorded by CSETI and also have been recorded by the BBC while they were investigating some of these unusual electromagnetic fields in the crop circles in England, and that I got from Colin Andrews, who, of course, coined the term crop circle. And those tones are then sent out. We just play them, and if you have a radio transceiver or walkie-talkie, we send it out into space. And that's another thing, I think, Todd, that's in this app, is the actual electronic tones that we send out are in this, that you can play off of your iPhone or iPad.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the iPhone has a speaker built into it that's actually loud enough that you can play them without even providing any other amplification. And like you said, ideally, if you bring even just a little Radio Shack walkie-talkie and hold down the transmit button and put it next to the iPhone, you can do the same thing we do out in our fieldwork and send these tones out over the airwaves so that any beings nearby will pick up on them. And so it's neat that we can include these different types of tools that we've been using, and that you've been using for a couple of decades now to initiate contact. And the fact that we can put so many of these different things into a little app on the iPhone is really a cool development, I think.
Oh, it's brilliant what you've done, really. I mean, when I first saw the beta version of this in November, when we were up in Joshua Tree National Park doing our contact work there, I was just completely amazed. And the other thing that's amazing about this is that it's really a completely self-contained training program that you can have on your iPhone or iPad, and you can go out anywhere in the world and not only have these tones that we send out, but the meditation tapes, the videos, the photographs, and the protocols. About the only thing that's not included would be the laser that we send up into space to give them a vector, which you can get from, I think there's a link or a place where we explain where you can get those. But the other thing that's amazing is that the fact that Todd, that you figured out how to take this magnetic field compass component of an iPhone and turn it into a magnetometer. Now, for those of you who are not technically inclined, let me just comment on that because it's such an important development. This tool, this app, is the only one we know of in the world where you'll be able to download this app and have your iPhone become a sophisticated and sensitive magnetic field meter that will measure the fluxing of the magnetic field around you when an interstellar vehicle is approaching. And, those of you who've listened to this show, but if you're new to it, when we go out under the stars and make contact, when there are extraterrestrial vehicles either in the area that are approaching or about to materialize out of interdimensional space-time into linear three-dimensional space-time, there are these extraordinary electromagnetic and magnetic field energies that are given out. And the magnetometers that we have in the field, and these are pretty expensive if you go and buy one, will actually begin to the needle will begin to pulse or go sometimes completely off scale. In this case, your iPhone will have a built-in meter that will have both correct me if I'm wrong, Todd, an audible tone as well as a sort of meter indicator when the magnetic field is fluxing.
That's correct. It resembles a physical gauge, so it's got a little needle, and then it will turn red when a really anomalous signal comes through.
Yeah, that's amazing because, this is such an advancement in being able to make available to millions of people. Now that there have been something like 10 billion app downloads, to millions of people, the close encounters of the fifth kind protocols that have been developed, and which, by the way, have been proven to work. I mean, if you go to CSETI.org, you'll see the photographs and the pictures, even the extraterrestrial beings that we have photographed who have come in during our contact expeditions. And I have to say, I want to just divert for a moment here and say, one of the things that is really motivating me as the founder of the project to do this is those of you who have studied the work of people like Rupert Sheldrake and Larry Dossi and Dr. John at the Princeton Engineering Anomalies Laboratory and others know that the power of the conscious mind is enormous. And when there are a group of people doing this and then thousands of people doing this, it actually creates a morphogenic field. It actually manifests change. And that by having an app like this that literally millions of people can have access to very, very inexpensively and very easily on their iPhones and iPads, and someday down the road maybe on the Androids as well, although we're not ready to do that yet. We haven't developed that yet. That people will be able to do this. And they also, if you're someplace where you see a UFO, and you have this on your app, you can hit it, and it'll go through a tutorial to tell you what do you do instead of just staring there with your mouth hanging open. There are actually protocols that will then kick in so that you will know what to do to interact and signal with the extraterrestrial vehicles and make peaceful contact. And this is exactly how change happens. So, rather than waiting for Hillary Clinton and the UN Secretary General to do this, this is an opportunity for thousands and millions of people to do it. And I think that this is a really exciting breakthrough moment, I think, for the effort for us as people of the world to say it's time for us to make peaceful contact with these interstellar visitors rather than letting it by default be relegated to the military-industrial complex, which has made an utter mess out of it by militarizing the situation, and I might add by targeting extraterrestrial vehicles with very advanced electromagnetic weapons. So this is a way that whole consciousness can shift by many people doing it. It's a little bit like the 100th monkey story, where they've done studies where on islands in the Pacific where once a certain number of monkeys on one island begin to learn a new skill or social skill or some sort of adaptive behavior, then non-locally, just through the effect of consciousness, monkeys on another island that have no direct linear contact begin to know and learn the same thing. And this has been proven scientifically. So in the terms of the human situation, when you have more and more humans making contact and using consciousness and peaceful consciousness to make contact with these civilizations, it literally changes the course of the now going into the future and manifests that good future where we can have a civilization that's peaceful on this planet but is also going out into space peacefully. And this is, I think, an amazingly powerful tool to enable, literally millions of people access to the CE5 protocols. And just so those of you who may not have heard this before, a close encounter of the fifth kind is when humans invite the extraterrestrial civilizations to interact with them, or if they happen to see a UFO, they voluntarily interact with it in a peaceful fashion. And this is a term that I coined in 1990 called Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. Ultimately, a NASA researcher, Dr. Richard Haynes, wrote an entire book on this, where he documented all throughout the world where thousands of people had done this quite accidentally. And so what we have done over the last 2 decades is to create these protocols and then gather people together and experiment with it and develop them. And this is why we have had such amazing contact experiences all over the world. And there's a new book, by the way, and you can get it at disclosureproject.org, that came out about a year ago that's called Contact, Countdown the Transformation, and it comes with a DVD that actually shows the pictures and the images and the tones and all kinds of phenomenon that has occurred while we're having contact out under the stars together. And it's really exciting. And or those of you who are interested, we are going to be doing a 3-day intensive training in Orange County, California, coming up in February on the weekend of the 18th, 19th, and 20th. And also we're going to be for a week on Marco Island in the Gulf of Mexico, March 6th through the 12th. And we actually have at both of these locations state parks that are going to be gated and dedicated to our team going out together under the stars. And we will be using these protocols. And during the afternoons, we will be learning about remote viewing and consciousness and all the information that one needs to have to go out into the stars and make contact together. What this app is going to do, which is really quite amazing, is that it will enable people who cannot come to a week-long or a 3-day event like we're having in Orange County in February, to be able to do this and begin to experiment on their own, including the meditation protocols that are, correct me if I'm wrong, is the actual audio voice recording of the guided meditations that I've done, Todd.
Yes, we've got a couple of different meditations, and that's actually, I think, one of the really great things about the app that we were talking about earlier is the fact that, when we go out in the field doing CSETI expeditions, one of the things that as you know, is sort of begins the contact process, and that is getting everybody into a deeper state of consciousness. And we're so good at leading these meditations that it's, very helpful to have you right there, guiding people into a deeper state of consciousness and to help with the walking through the coherent thought sequencing you were talking about earlier. The fact that we can have a couple hours of those meditations within this app, right alongside all of the other tools and written instruction, I think is going to be very helpful for people who are new to this to be able to experience the same sorts of things that we do out in the field. When I started going to CSETI trainings, I found it took a little while to be able to relax and really go into deeper states of consciousness, in a big group. We had 30 or 40 people sometimes. And eventually, when I did, and I think your meditations were a big help with that, amazing things started happening. I think you remember a couple of years ago, Steve, when we were in Crestone and the Big Dipper event happened.
Oh, yes. Why don't you tell people how that happened? That's such an amazing event.
Sure. Actually, one of the meditations in the app was from that same week, oddly enough. Oh. But we were up on the side of a mountain in Crestone, Colorado, and we were having a really amazing series of events that night. And it was the first night that I personally had found I could go into a really deep state of consciousness. And all of a sudden, one of the stars in the Big Dipper started to fade out. And everybody started noticing this. And over about the course of 2 minutes, it completely went out. And people pulled out the binoculars, and we had some military-grade night vision devices, and we were making sure there were no clouds or other obstructions, and there weren't. You could see all of the stars surrounding it, but the star just wasn't there. And then over the course of about 2 more minutes, it came back on.
And this
so
was after, but this was after you had asked the ETs to do something involving the Big Dipper. This is the key thing. That in meditation, Todd went into this state with this meditation that's actually in this app for the iPhones and iPads, and in that relaxed state connected to the ETs and asked them to do something involving the primary stars. Of course, there are 7 of them in the Big Dipper. And, of course, none of the rest of us knew that Todd had quietly, in this meditation, asked for that, and then it started.
That's right. Yeah, I looked up the key part of it, but that's exactly right. And I had asked them if they could maybe rearrange 2 of the stars or do something to move the stars, and then I stopped myself and I said, it sounds like I'm asking them to do tricks. Just do whatever you want to do that's safe and appropriate, as we often do in this work. And sure enough, within a few minutes, this started happening. And after the first star faded out and then came back, another star in the Big Dipper did the same thing. And this went on for, I think, 23 minutes.
Correct.
One star after the next, fading out and then coming back in some kind of sequence. And it was really phenomenal.
It was phenomenal because it was also very mathematical and very advanced and abstract. And while we've had extraterrestrial vehicles materialize over us, we've had ET beings that we've seen in the field and photographed near us, and you can see that at CSETI.org. This sort of thing is something that's so, in a way, abstract and bizarre, and yet it's one of thousands of ways that these close encounters of the fifth kind happen, where you have a very high level of cosmic intelligence with these interstellar civilizations, which obviously are quite evolved to be able to have lived long enough to travel amongst the stars and be so in a peaceful state, which they are. And what we found is that in this meditative state, that when there's a member of the team, and of course when we do these trainings we may have a couple dozen or even 30 or 40 people with us, but you can do the same thing with 3 or 4 people that are your friends and go out and do this. There will be all kinds of ways that these civilizations will manifest that in a way are elegant and nuanced and in some ways more mind-boggling than if a spacecraft materialized right overhead. And in this case, we had these really very advanced night vision scopes looking at the star field. There was nothing there. It was clear air and clear sky. We're up at, I don't know what we were, maybe 9,000 feet or 9,500 feet on the side of Blanca Peak, which is the sacred mountain of the East for the Native American tribes of that part of the United States. And overlooking the San Luis Valley, and at this site where we've had amazing contact over the years, and all of a sudden, after Todd asked the ETs to begin to do something involving the stars in the Big Dipper, all this happens. And by the way, this is something everyone there saw and experienced. And then what was interesting later that night, many people who went back, when we got back to our rooms and our condos where we were staying down in Crestone, there were weird anomalies with the clocks that were in the houses and in the rooms, where they would be, and usually when the power goes off, it's, they all reset to 1200, 12 o'clock. They were 3:03 or 6:06, some multiple of threes, and flashing. And it wasn't just 1 or 2, it was several. So there was this abstract mathematical communication that was happening, and at the same time, I might point out, these magnetic field magnetometers and electromagnetic field meters were also being activated and were going off. So you have all of this going at the same time, and it was preceded, I might comment, by an extraterrestrial vehicle that we did see that was sort of a reddish-orange object that came in from the direction of the sort of northeast and flew in, and then came kind of in the direction of where the Big Dipper was, and then vanished, and we didn't see it anymore. But it apparently dematerialized, which meant that its resonant frequency of this craft moved up faster than the speed of light and beyond what the visible spectrum is, and then began to do something that would cause these stars in the Big Dipper to be obscured. Now, this is just one example of what happened in one meditation, where there are literally thousands of accounts like this. And what I think is going to be amazing is to see hundreds of or thousands of people, maybe millions of people, eventually finding out about this app and having it on their iPhones and iPads and going out with friends and experimenting with this and seeing what happens, because this is exactly what the military-industrial complex can't control. They can't any more than Mubarak can control thousands of people in Egypt who are protesting that tyranny. So what you find is that the power of people coming together and doing this is going to be greatly potentiated by people having access to all this information in a format, and Todd's just done an amazing job putting this all together, I have to say.
Oh, thanks.
So what are some of the other things that are in this app? I mean, it's just amazing what all is in here. I mean, it's really volumes of stuff.
Yes, it is. Another one of the instruments that we've included, besides the magnetometer, is a compass, and we've had many occasions where ordinary physical compasses have reversed polarity during contact events. So this gives another opportunity to detect these types of electromagnetic phenomena. We actually have included some text and a few pictures of some of these events within the app as well. So
yeah,
that's another tool.
You know, the compass that I have that I've used for years, and many of you may know this, remember this account. Back in 1992, we were doing the CE5, or Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind protocols in England, in Alton Barnes, and there was an extraterrestrial vehicle that materialized in a field about 10 feet above the ground and began to move towards us. As it did so, there was this very powerful electromagnetic field torsion or twisting that you could feel. In fact, excuse me, the hair on people's bodies were standing on end from this charge. And as it moved forward towards us, it was only a few hundred feet away in the field, my compass began to rotate counterclockwise, just like the spacecraft was. This was a disc-shaped craft, about 100 feet diameter, that came up to a point, and then there was a cluster of amber lights on the top of it. And as it was going around counterclockwise, there were all these beautiful lights that were going in both directions, bleeding and blending into each other in the most amazing colors that we'd ever seen. But while this craft was moving and spinning counterclockwise, the compass I was holding began to move counterclockwise, but not spinning quickly, but moving very slowly. And over the course of an hour, it moved 360 degrees, full circle, all the way around counterclockwise. And so the whole magnetic field twisted. Now, fast forward to this past summer, and we had this amazing contact that happened while we were in France, about 6 months ago now. And we were on this 2,000-acre estate that some of the founding families of the French Republic gave us to use. And while we were there, we had this amazing series of encounters, including a craft that materialized and then dematerialized very quickly, just maybe 15 feet outside the circle. That was quite large. My compass flipped polarity 180 degrees, and it's like that to this day. This is the first time that it stayed like that, literally. And you would really have to have a very powerful electromagnet to cause a compass to do that, where the magnetized part of the needle, if you know what a compass looks like, that points north, is now pointing south. It's really a remarkable thing to see. And these are the kinds of things. And so this has this built in so that if there's a compass field, you can see if the directions begin to turn while a craft is approaching. And often this will happen even if there isn't a visible craft. Because remember, if you're going faster than the speed of light, but not traveling linearly, but just resonantly hovering, you could have a craft that is 100 feet from you that's completely invisible to the naked eye, because the craft and everyone and everything in it is has a frequency that's beyond the speed of normal electrons and photons and matter and what have you. And this is exactly the kind of transdimensional, interdimensional phenomenon that we see. However, it will begin to throw off these magnetic fields, and that's sort of an early warning or early indication, not warning so much, indication that you have a craft nearby and that you should prepare for further contact. So all of these protocols and what to look for are sort of explained with these tools, and this is in this app that will be at the App Store. So for people who haven't ever downloaded an app but who have an iPhone or an iPad, why don't you just tell them kind of how to go to this, how to do this, how it works?
Sure. Yeah, it's pretty easy. If you have an iPhone, an iPad, or an iPod Touch, you just go to the App Store, either through your phone, there's an app called App Store, or you can just go to it through iTunes. And you just search for CSETI, CSETI, and it will come right up. The app uses the CSETI logo with stars behind it, and it's called the ET Contact Tool. It's really the only thing like it on the App Store, and we categorized it under utilities because that's what it is. It's, I think, the only utility probably in the world for making contact. So that's how you find it. And
what a great!
You can also, you can also find it by going to the CSETI website, cseti.org. There is a link for ET Contact Tool. And then that has a full page explaining it and screenshots and what have you. And then that also will link directly to the App Store where you can download the app.
Right. And for folks who want to come out with me personally on some of these expeditions, you can find out about the schedule for both Orange County, which we're going to be doing in February from the 18th, 19th, and 20th in Orange County. We're going to be in a canyon and have a lake. That we're going to be doing this. In fact, where in November of 2009 we had some amazing contact that happened at exactly that site, including the recording very briefly of an ET voice that spoke to the group that everyone heard. And we are going to be there for those 3 days and 3 nights and out under the stars at night, and there in the afternoon we'll be meeting nearer to this site and going through these meditation protocols, which includes the training in a mantra meditation that facilitates transcendence and going into the deep, quiet samadhi state from which optimal remote viewing of deep space and of these other civilizations is most effective. And then, of course, from there, a description of the coherent thought sequencing, the sort of zooming in meditation that's done with thought. And we will also have a lot of these electromagnetic devices with us, not just the ones from the iPhone, but the actual laser detectors and magnetometers and electric field meters and electrostatic storm detectors. And we'll have a very powerful laser that will send up one that reaches about 200 miles into space. As well as the electromagnetic tones, which are in this app, but we'll have, of course, a regular speaker system for projecting those, playing those out into space. And so, people who want to learn how to do this, and the idea is that, in medicine we have a saying, see one, do one, teach one. So you see it done once, and then you go off and you can do it yourself, and then you begin to teach other people. And this is exactly how you kind of have this mass consciousness effect happen. And but for those of you who cannot make it to these events or to the Marco Island week-long training we're going to be having in Florida, March 6th through 12th, you can do this on your own. And one thing I want to share is that we have a member of our team who has just been involved for a couple of years named Emery. He is had been in the Air Force and he has a biotech company now. And he just got this meditation that is on this iPhone app and iPad app. But before it was in that format, he just got the regular CD. And it's before he had ever met me personally or gone out with our team. And he was in Florida doing this meditation, and he went into a state of consciousness where he was able to remote view, and then he had this experience where he saw, and there were these extraterrestrial vehicles and beings literally in his backyard. And it was one of the most amazing experiences he had ever had. So people need to realize that these protocols are very powerful. They actually do work, and that now that this will be available to the millions of people who have iPhones and iPads and what have you, are going to, I think, have an opportunity to try this out, and in doing so, create this tilt, this sort of momentum in mass consciousness, which is really how change happens in the world. And the meditations are also, not only do they involve the vectoring, as I call it, and the sort of the connecting to the ET craft and asking them to appear, but there's also a part of it that's very much about the healing, a meditation for the healing and the protection of the earth and the guidance of humanity. And when you have thousands and thousands of people doing that, it has a huge effect. And this is really how amazing change can happen. It's the foundation of change. It always happens first in consciousness. And of course, everyone at the World Puja Network understands the power of mind and consciousness. And I think that, letting people know, even if you don't have an iPhone or an iPad, let people that you know who do have them to try this out, because I think that what we want this to do is to really go viral and have lots of people kind of realize that they can do this and begin to experiment with it and realize that they can make contact, and that will create this huge change. And there's no better way to effect disclosure of the truth of the subject than to have millions of people beginning to do this, seeing these extraterrestrial spacecraft or beings or different phenomena, electromagnetic phenomenon, and then letting their neighbors and friends and coworkers know, because that ultimately is the ultimate, in my opinion, the way real change happens is heart to heart, mind to mind, person to person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if I could add something else about the app, Steve, something I think a lot of people aren't aware of is just the wide variety of phenomena that do occur besides seeing a physical craft, manifested in front of you. So something that we've focused on in the app is making people aware of the incredible array of things that they might experience when doing this type of work, and the kinds of things to look for when making contact. And we've got several pages of written material on this, and then we also have a collection of images and video clips showing things that we've seen on CSETI training, so that people can see for themselves the kinds of things that they might experience.
Right, and I think that's really important to realize. One example of this, and some of what's included, are tips on photography. And this is a very important area to discuss just briefly. I know, and this is included in in the app in terms of a sort of description of things that you might try, is that if we have had experiences where people have seen some phenomenon near them, like a field distortion, or the electromagnetic detectors are going off, and then they take a photograph, and in that photograph, without a flash, and in that photograph, in the ultraviolet range, there'll be an extraterrestrial vehicle that is visible. And we have people on our team, for example, in Australia, who have done this. The other thing, which your wife, Raven, has done, as well as Emery, is to have a camera that you can adjust the ISO and the aperture on a tripod, and have the lens open for 4 seconds or 5 seconds or 10 seconds, of course, being as still as possible. And when you're feeling that they're present, take a picture and see what appears. And actually, we have had physical extraterrestrial beings that have then flashed in and come into linear space-time and posed and waved at the group. And this is at CSETI.org. And you can try this. And so I think that this is important, because there are tips in here not only about the kind of phenomenon, but also how to record it. The other thing that we've had happen are tones. I mentioned that we have these electromagnetic tones that are in this app, that you can turn your iPhone or iPad into a tape player, basically, and you can hear it audibly. It has a speaker in it. And it has very good sound quality. I listened to it in November. And then you can project it over a walkie-talkie or a radio transmitter out into space. the reverse has happened, and that is where we have been doing the meditation after sending these tones out, and then there'll be a tone that will come from transdimensional space-time that will audibly, everyone will hear. And this happened when we were in Joshua Tree this past November. This happened in a very demonstrable way several times. In fact, at one point, we went to an area where we did a puja. Since we're on the World Puja Network, I'll talk about this. And it was at this site where we did a Sanskrit puja and where we were doing the meditation. And I do this, and Orange County will do this one of the evenings, and also at Marco Island. And I'll do one of these Sanskrit pujas and teach people the meditation techniques. But at this thing, we actually did a puja outdoors at night on the site, which I think is kind of the first time we've done that. And the following night, I believe it was, we were right at that exact spot, and I heard exactly the tones that were recorded in 1989 in the crop circles by the BBC and that Colin Andrews got to us, which are on this app, that are in this app. And this is also a spot where there was a field vortex where when we were standing, there was actually a gravitational field that was moving counterclockwise, and Raven was actually affected in it, where she began to swirl counterclockwise. It was really an amazing.
That's right.
It was amazing, and this is very similar to what happened to Pat Delgado in this crop circle when these tones were recorded. And if you look at the account that Colin Andrews has provided about how these tones came about, it was more than just some tones in a field. There was all this anti-gravity and electromagnetic field that literally affected Pat Delgado, where he was like at a 45-degree angle laying backwards and was being held there impossibly. And, so we're talking about some really strange stuff. But that's what you would expect if you're talking about something not of this world, interstellar, and technologies that are 1 million years, 10 million years, hundreds of thousands of years beyond where we are today. And so this is why, the tutorial in this app is so important in terms of what you've just described, Todd, and that is all the different ways, all the different type of expressions and manifestations and phenomena that can associate with an extraterrestrial vehicle or being that's present. And it's a whole range of things. And it's not just, people think it's always a Steven Spielberg movie with a spacecraft materialized, which sometimes it is, but it's actually infinitely more nuanced, complex, subtle, and interesting, in my opinion, than that, and particularly when there are extraterrestrial beings nearby, because one of the things that we've had happen, for lack of a better term, I've coined the concept of electronic astral projection. And it's just like all of you have had experiences where you've had a lucid dream where you're flying and you see something and then the next day it actually happens, a part of precognitive dream, or where you've had an out-of-body experience. Well, visualize interstellar civilizations having very advanced electronics that help them teleport onto site where they're in that kind of form. And then they can go from being very invisible to being slightly visible to being fully materialized and back again in a fraction of a second or in a few seconds. And this has happened on site, and we've actually filmed it. So these are the things that are very important for people to understand. I mean, I think most people, when they come to these week-long trainings, I have to say it's really life-changing because they learn things and see things and experience things that they thought that would never be possible, but they happen. And, I mean, it's some of it is so extraordinary that you really couldn't even make it up because you would never think to make it up. But that's the sort of thing that is important that people learn about so that when they go out in a remote place with a group of 3 or 4 or 5 people and do this, that they have some understanding of all the ways that these civilizations will connect. And I have to say, the thing that's really determinative here is the state of consciousness of the person, the intent and heart of the person, a sort of pure-hearted innocence and peacefulness in this sort of peaceful samadhi state. And this is why the Sanskrit meditation and the meditative state is so important, because these civilizations simply are not interested in interfacing with curiosity seekers or people who are just materialistic and want to have some entertainment. These are not porpoises at SeaWorld. And so the state of mind that one wants to be in is a sincere intent to connect with these civilizations for a larger purpose than one's own selfish interest, and that is to create a time of universal peace where humanity will acknowledge we're not alone in the universe and that we will coexist in a peaceful way, an enlightened way with these civilizations, and that, moreover, the sciences and technologies involved with understanding interstellar transdimensional technology will give us the key to the energy and transportation technologies and communication technologies of the future, where we can live on this planet without pollution and without poverty and in peace. And these are the huge changes which have been trying to take place over the last 50 to 100 years that have been thwarted by people who, are very attached to the $600 trillion asset base of oil and gas and coal. But everyone on this show, I'm quite sure, who are listening, aren't, unless you happen to own $1 trillion oil field, probably are not so attached to that old paradigm, and want to learn about this new transformative civilization which is emerging and is not far away. It's emerging and happening all around us, and that's why the foundation of everything we've done with disclosureproject.org, where nearly 1 billion people learned of the fact that we're not alone, and we've had all these top secret people come forward, the orionproject.org that deals with these sciences and technologies. But the heart and the foundation of everything we've done is what is in this app, and that's contact, peaceful contact for establishing a time of universal peace. So other items that you can think of that are in this app that are important to talk about?
Well, we sort of walk people through the process of finding the location and, like I said, gathering any equipment you might be able to get your hands on, even a small laser pointer, and giving people the basics about how to go out and do this and how to assemble a group if you can find people who are like-minded and wanting to make peaceful contact. That helps. Like you said, the 100th monkey effect is present even in small groups. Even if you don't have 50 people, 3 or 4 people, I believe the term would be non-linear in terms of the effect of meditation with a group of people, more than one person. But you can do it by yourself as well. So we make that clear in the app.
That's right. And in fact, one of the interesting things, if you look at the work of Dr. John at Princeton and others, and I remember some years ago I spoke to Dr. John, and he said, Dr. Greer, what you're doing is sort of an applied, in the field, interstellar aspect of what I've done in the laboratory, and that is to prove that the conscious mind isn't limited to the domain of the body, that it's sort of this omnipresent field, and that he has done experiments and did experiments where if you had one person, for example, putting their intent on a random number generator or a robot, it would have a certain effect in altering those random numbers shifted in the direction of the intent of the person or the robot to move in a certain direction, which shouldn't happen if it was a mechanistic world that wasn't conscious in a holographic conscious universe. But if you had 2 people that were unified or loved each other do it, the effect wasn't twice, it was exponential. And so imagine that if you're with a few people that you have a bond with and that you're close with and you're out under the stars and you're doing this meditation in a deep state of sort of universal peace and cosmic awareness, the effect it can have is many times exponential. And so that's the power of this, although you can certainly do it by yourself. But, the old saying, God loves those who work together and with others. I think that there's really a lot of truth to that because it isn't additive. It's an exponential effect in awareness and consciousness when people join together to do something very positive like this. And so that's the power of that. And you don't need, of course, 50 or 20 people. If you have 3 or 4 or 5 people, it's plenty. And the key thing is having people of like mind who understand that the contact that needs to happen is happening from a higher level of consciousness and intent than curiosity or fear. And this is very important because most people, I've had so many people come up to me and say, oh, aren't you afraid to go out there that the ETs might harm you? I say, oh, for heaven's sakes, no. I mean, we've had military jet aircraft come in and at stall speed 200 feet above us. We've had electromagnetic weapons shot at ET craft that have been approaching. Luckily, they've dematerialized prior to being hit. We've had all kinds of people kind of try to disrupt what we were doing. The ETs have never done anything but the most amazing and beautiful things. And so I say I would put 20 years of our experience with thousands of people all over the world and continents all over the world doing this, where no one has had anything but wonderful and positive experiences with these civilizations over all the warmongering and rumor-mongering that passes as UFO studies today. And so I think that people need to understand that there is, however, a high strangeness component. And this is where if you go out with others, there's not only the power and consciousness, but you're with people you're connected with, so that when an ET craft or something begins to happen, you're not completely overwhelmed and doing it alone. I think there is a sense of security being with other people of like mind in this. And I think that many people who come out with me feel that sitting out under the stars at midnight or 1 or 2 in the morning and doing these protocols and then having events begin to happen, that it's really comforting to have the company of people that you know and trust and love and are connected to while you're doing it. And I think that's another reason why, while you certainly can do this on your own, it's more powerful, and probably people get a greater sense of comfort to do this when they do it with a few other people of like mind.
Right. And on that note, we have all sorts of plans for the app and things that we're discussing adding to it in the future. But one of them is using the ability to send notifications to an app so that we could potentially coordinate people around the world to make contact at the same time. And, we've got a member of the CSETI team who has a meditation and prayer group who they coordinate CE5s and they do things at the same time around the world and with amazing effects. So that's another potential thing we could do through this app if it catches on and there are enough people, like you said, if it goes viral, who knows, we might be able to send out notices so that people could do CE5s at the same time, maybe on the same night, and see what happens.
Yes, or even be notified that there are other people in your area who want to join together to do it, or sort of a networking. But also, if an event starts unfolding in your region where there are maybe more than one night in a row where these extraterrestrial vehicles are being seen, or people are having experiences, that then you say, oh my God, well maybe me and the people I've been networking with on this ought to go out and do this and make contact. So I think that's a very exciting feature that may be coming down the road as well. And of course, Todd's been doing this as a volunteer in his spare time, and he has a full-time job, and as we all are. So, this may take some time, but there are things to look forward to, and I think that's what's another really exciting thing about this whole adventure, is that we have the technology now that didn't exist when I started and founded CSETI.org, CSETI.org in 1990, to do this kind of mass networking and communication. And, it's a very powerful force for change in the world, and that's a very good thing.
Absolutely. Yep.
Well, I think our hour is about up. I just want to remind folks that if you are wanting to come to the event in Orange County, California, this February 18th, 19th, and 20th. It's 3 days and nights we're going to be together. You can go to CSETI.org and find out about that. Or if you want to come to Marco Island, Florida in March 6th to 12th, information is on the website for that as well. And also we're going to be in Crestone, Colorado in June. So all the dates and schedules for this year are up there. And, of course, we're going to be taking a group to the crop circles in England in July, which will be amazing, a small group. But if you are free to come over to England, we're going to be staying right near Stonehenge, in fact, at a wonderful place, and going out during the day to all the crop circles that appear while we're there, and then at night we're going to be going out under the stars, usually in the crop circles that we get access to, and actually be doing this contact work in the field circles. It's kind of amazing. In fact, this year, for the first time, we did a puja in a crop circle, and boy, the photographs and the images we have from the contact that happened then, well, we hope to get those out as soon as we can, but it's just amazing what has happened there. And we also did one at Woodhenge, which is an ancient site near Stonehenge, just a few miles from Stonehenge. And so those of you who are interested in that, the information is up at CSETI.org as well. So I hope to see some of you folks out under the stars, and for those of you who can't join us personally, I hope that you guys who have iPhones and iPads will go to the app's site and download this one and begin to learn the protocols and experiment with them and look up to the stars and know that every stable star system out there has planets around it with life and creatures who are conscious and awake even as we are, and that it's an amazing journey to go on together, a long-term journey that humanity is now embarking on, where we're going to become a peaceful civilization living in a universe filled with intelligent beings in a whole new world, and a transformed world with the sciences and technologies that will be unveiled with this knowledge. So it's a really exciting time. And I'd like to thank you, Todd, for your amazing work and skill as a computer guy. I mean, boy, we really needed to have this, and you pulled it out, and it's much more impressive than I thought it could possibly be, because I'm sort of an idiot when it comes to these technical things, frankly. I'm really good with a defibrillator or a ventilator, but these things are beyond my ability to imagine doing, and now that it's real, and it's there for everyone to get. So I hope people who have iPhones and iPads will take advantage of it. And I'd like to thank you for your great work.
You bet, Steve. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Well, until next time, I'd like to thank everyone at the World Puja Network for hosting us every 2 weeks. This is Dr. Steven Greer with Conversations with Dr. Greer. And until then, keep looking up, and I hope to see all of you soon. God bless.